back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. President Trump meeting with his cabinet at the White House today. Today's meeting, by the way, comes on the heels of an Oval Office get-together with various cabinet members and other national security leaders yesterday to discuss future actions related to Venezuela. The commander-in-chief will wrap up his busy day with an announcement about Trump accounts. Those accounts are new tax-advantaged savings and investment accounts slated to benefit America's children. They were established through the passage of the president's One Big Beautiful Bill. Stay tuned to Real America's Voice for live coverage of the various events happening at the White House throughout the day. The Navy Admiral who gave the order for a follow-up strike on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean back in September is scheduled to brief members of the House and the Senate Armed Services Committees on the attack this coming Thursday. At issue are concerns about potential war crimes because there were reportedly survivors of the initial strike, and the second strike was supposedly ordered to kill any remaining people on the vessel, which, if accurate, could be illegal. Both Democrats and Republicans are raising concerns about how the strike was carried out. In the meantime, the White House claims the second strike was in self-defense and accordance with laws governing armed conflict.
Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
Republican Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi is promising a thorough investigation of the matter. Senator Wicker is the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. He points out that the ramifications of the report on the attack are, quote, serious charges. The Trump administration is facing another legal setback of sorts as a federal appeals court has ruled that Trump-appointed acting U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey, Alina Habba, was illegally given that job. As a result, Habba is disqualified from supervising cases. She served as President Trump's personal lawyer leading up to his re-election. There is still no comment from the White House or the Justice Department on Monday's ruling.
You're listening to the sound of freedom. It's the Charlie Kirk Show.
All right, welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. We're about to welcome Michael Knowles onto the show. President Trump's cabinet continues on. He's trying to explain how to say Pete Buttigieg's name, which is always a fun anecdote. But first, I'm going to tell you guys about Patriot Mobile. Think about it. Every dollar you spend is either supporting your values or working against them. In today's economy, where you spend your money matters. That's how we take our country back. Patriot Mobile is leading the way as America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. Switch today without sacrificing quality or service. You'll get exceptional nationwide coverage because, unlike most budget wireless provider, Patriot Mobile has access to all three major U.S. networks. You can even add two numbers on one phone, which is what I do. Something the big guys can't even do. So stay connected with flexible, unlimited data plans to fit your lifestyle. These offer high-speed mobile hotspots, international roaming, device protection, and even internet backup. And here's the best part. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you'll support faith, family, and freedom. If you believe in our First and Second Amendment rights, the sanctity of life, and supporting veterans, this is where you belong. So right now, go to patriotmobile.com/Charlie or call 972-PATRIOT to get a free month of service with promo code Charlie. That's patriotmobile.com/Charlie. Use promo code Charlie for a free month of service. Make the switch today. Michael Knowles, host of the Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show, my friend. Good to see you.
What's going on, man? Good to be here.
I'm not going to ask you about Catholicism.
I think we should. We should have him rate. We should have him rate the Pope after 6 months. That'd be fun.
we
That's
could
all
get
you ever
there.
ask me about on text. That's all you ever want to talk about.
That's all I want to talk about. No, we could. Well, okay, Blake's going to ask you to grade the Pope in just a few minutes here. After his first
he's been
6
carrying
months.
baseball bats on planes.
There was
He's
an
been
ice
doing
ball
dance
fiasco.
party.
There was an ice
weird
ball
stuff.
fiasco.
Yeah.
Yes. But Knowles, first question. Okay, so this is actually where we're going to start on. I want you to sort of make sense of our political moment that we find ourselves in. There is all this consternation about Venezuela, about Pete Hegseth, and, were these war crimes? Was there a double tap? The New York Times seems to suggest it's not. it does have this feeling of a messaging op, sort of. They roll out this suspicious video, the seditious six, as they're being labeled, and then all of a sudden we get this whole inquiry into the Venezuelan cartel narco trafficking, strikes. What do you make of this moment? Why are they so fixated on Pete Hegseth?
They've been going after Pete Hegseth since before the guy was confirmed. I mean, let's not forget this. A lot of us know Pete, not just people who are friends with Pete, but who have watched Pete every morning on Fox News. And, he's been a public figure for a long time. And more than any other member of this cabinet, the Democrats seemed absolutely devoted to torpedoing him before he came in as Secretary of War. And so to me, if I didn't know anything else about Venezuela, Iran, anything about the military, if all I knew is that this guy was the chief target in the cabinet for the Democrats, I would be defending him wholeheartedly. Now, on top of that, you've had a very, very effective military strategy under Trump, recruitment way up, getting a lot of the woke out in terms of the policy of the military itself. Then obviously very, very successful military operations in the Middle East. Now we're looking at operations in Latin America. So I think he's doing a very good job generally. But I just take it simply on a rule of thumb. If he's the guy they want to take out, he's probably the guy I'm going to be defending.
Yeah, that's exactly been my posture as well. It's like we must be over the mark here with Secretary Hegseth because they want to get him out so badly. But this is part of this larger, there's two, basically, at this point, we diverge in a wood, right? There's two main through lines, narratives that are going on right now. There is this, we had the National Guard attack, the ambush by an Afghan refugee, and that brings up this whole foreign policy conversation in and of itself. But then, meanwhile, there's all this intrigue around Venezuela. Are we going to strike? Are we going to, we're moving carriers into the region? And MAGA and the base typically has been postured in a way that says we don't want to get involved in any more foreign entanglements. We don't want blood and death overseas. We want to focus domestically. What would you like to see play out in the next days and weeks ahead when it comes to Venezuela specifically? And then we'll get into our own immigration debate that we're also having.
Yeah, I love the way you put it, Andrew, because it's kind of a confounding issue for MAGA. If the question were about some never-ending regime change war in the Middle East or Africa or something, I think MAGA would be unified, say, we don't want that at all. However, this is a little different because this is much closer to home. The Monroe Doctrine, which says America runs the Western Hemisphere, has been our official policy since 1823. This involves a direct threat to Americans, which is all the drugs that are coming largely from Venezuela and specifically to foreign terrorist organizations that are associated with the regime, kills over 75,000 Americans a year. It also involves hard resources. One of the funniest things about President Trump's foreign policy is how open he is. He says, we didn't go to war for oil in Iraq, but we at least should have gotten the oil. Natural resources really do matter. And, this is our hemisphere. So I think it's a little dicier on what Americans are thinking about it. Look, the ideal scenario is you completely destroy the narco-terrorists. You wage a real war on drugs, meaning you blow up all the guys who are smuggling the drugs in and killing American kids. You take a hostile dictator who is partnering up with a lot of our enemies, and you replace him with someone who's maybe a little friendlier to us, and maybe that also helps the energy market too. That's what everyone wants in the ideal. The question is, can they pull this kind of thing off? I think they're going to get a lot more grace from the base in terms of actions in Latin America. The only question is, does the military, CIA, whatever, the U.S. government, do we have a serious plan in place to replace Maduro if they actually want regime change? Because there's two views of the CIA. One is James Bond, Jason Bourne, they control everything, they're super efficient. The other one is burn after reading. Like everything the CIA tries to do turns to ash and gets worse. And that's the debate right now. What is really going on here? All I will say on this, I favor a much more restrained foreign policy that is much closer to home, that involves much more direct American interests. All I will say with Trump is he has the most effective foreign policy of my lifetime, probably including George H.W. Bush. And so I'm willing to give the guy a little bit more grace here because he just hasn't bungled it all up like Clinton did, like George W. Bush did, and certainly like Obama and Biden did.
What strikes me as another factor in this is, well, we've had a lot of people come from Venezuela. That drove a lot of the migration pressure all the way back to Obama's administration into the first Trump, into Biden. And I think defenders of this would justify this, that if we topple this regime, it actually might help our migration issue. A lot of Venezuelans might go home. If you're correct and it took down Cuba as well, some Cubans might go home, although Cubans have mostly integrated great. But I feel like a lot of our other interventions have done the exact opposite. Right. 20 years in Afghanistan, we have to fight them over there so we don't fight them over here. And in fact, we are fighting them 2 blocks from the White House now.
Yes.
And it strikes me as a reasonable worry. Does another intervention in Latin America somehow have this side effect where we just have illegal immigrants massing at the border again?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key of worry that I have, actually. Are we going to spark another humanitarian disaster where we see massive flows of migrants from South America and Cuba specifically? A lot of people look at Cuba and Venezuela together. There's a New York Times story this morning, Michael, that suggests that Maduro now has augmented his private security detail with a bunch of Cuban soldiers that have come in, perhaps because he doesn't trust his own Venezuelans to have his back. But there is a very direct connection between Venezuela and Cuba. They are basically, conjoined at the hip here. And so the question is, would we get a mass exodus of people from this region? I tend to not think so. I do tend to think that a lot of that migration has already happened, and we also have President Trump in office who's going to block a lot of it. If we had a Democrat in the White House, we would see a lot more of that. The question is, does it meet the standard that Knowles is talking about of the Monroe Doctrine? Is it close enough to home? Will the base react to it? Will they reject it? I think, namely, we have a political question.
Remind you, the Monroe Doctrine was not just we dominate every country in the Western Hemisphere. It was keeping Europeans at the time, and I imagine you could count Chinese today, and
Russia,
of course, out of the hemisphere, not influencing it.
Well, you saw this in Panama, right? The Panama Canal. President Trump goes in and reasserts U.S. dominance over the canal, which was being taken over by China, actually, and so we were getting treated very poorly in the canal. So let's switch our attention here, Michael. We're kind of doing hopscotch here on topics, but the other main story is the president and now Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, coming down hard on third world migration. Now, I made a prediction that this was going to be President Trump's most popular policy plank yet. And I mean, including the wall, including the southern border. And we had Rich Barris on yesterday, he's doing polling on this, and the initial results seem to indicate that this is in fact very, very appealing with the base. So you've got a confluence of 2 different stories: foreign policy, which is always a snake pit full of vipers, full of surprises, full of backlash for the president and the administration. And then you've got his hardline immigration stance. Can these 2 coexist? Will the base be able to make sense of it?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it's going to be very popular because this issue has 2 things that really combine to make a great winning political issue. It's something that everyone agrees on, and something that everyone feels like they can't say. So everyone thinks on immigration that you have to be for all of it or against all of it or make no distinctions whatsoever. And obviously that's ridiculous. You mentioned the Cubans earlier. Cubans tend to assimilate. They're quite patriotic. They play baseball. They vote Republican. When we're talking about Latin American immigration, the Cubans, they're all right. I like the Cubans, okay? Other immigrant groups, less so. In America, we used to severely restrict immigration, and we would have some immigration from, say England. Then we started taking German migrants in the 19th century, and it was a little harder to assimilate German migrants, but it was okay. Then we took some of the swarthy Italians from, North Africa, basically. Basically worked out, other than the Pelosi's of the world, but it was a little harder still to assimilate them. Now you look at third world immigration, post-1965, Hart-Celler, and you have to ask yourself, what do Somalis add to America? And that's the naughty question that nobody wants to ask. But it's a very serious question, because the point of immigration is to make our country better. And if people are unassimilable, radically different cultures, different religions, different habits, different everything, I think we have the right to say, no thanks. We have an obligation to our own citizens. Everyone knows this. Everyone feels like they can't say it. And so if Trump is the one who's going to finally articulate it, it's going to be a winner.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that point you made about it's the thing that we all feel and think and see, but we're not allowed to say it out loud. I mean, we say it out loud on this show all the time, and you probably do as well. But like for normie Americans, this is sort of like, it's uncouth. It's not polite to say these things out loud, but we have to get courage. We have to get a backbone, start standing up for what we all know to be true. We want to live in an America that feels like America again, that feels like the country that we grew up in, and it simply more and more does not. And there's a reason for that. It's because we have had a completely catastrophic immigration platform for years. More with Michael Knowles. When we get back, we're going to talk about Catholicism. All right, we'll do it. We'll do it just for Blake. We'll be right back.